Welcome to The Bo Show, the home of faith, family, and freedom. Well, folks, we've come to the end of another year. And one of the best parts of this year for me has been hearing from new viewers of this show through your messages, your emails, and in person. I thank you for watching the show and spreading the good word. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. I want to spend some time focusing on a number of things and people and stories from 2022 that are worth reminding ourselves of. We have very short memories, and we look back and think to ourselves, wow, that happened in 2022? So let's take a trip down memory lane for a year in review. This is what I call 22 in 22, or 22 memorable stories that are worth our attention. This is a list that I have curated personally from stories that I covered and provided commentary for in the past year. And hopefully, you will all remember these stories as well as the impact that they had and may still have impact in 2023. So let's get started. Number one, Novak Djokovic and Kyrie Irving showed an athlete should have health autonomy and that nations have bad health policy. Novak and Kyrie elected not to get the COVID vaccine for personal health reasons. At a time when professional leagues and nations were mandating it, they decided to do what was best for them. But in the process, they were pilloried for it. They were treated as health risks, as if they were a danger to others, when in reality, wouldn't they be a bigger risk to themselves? Djokovic even had COVID, so he had natural immunity. But that wasn't enough for him to be able to play in the Australian Open. In a very embarrassing way for Australia, he was admitted to the country, he got quarantined in a hotel for multiple days, and then was deported, even though that he'd done all the proper paperwork, the declaration, and protocols to enter Australia to be able to play. As a result, not only did he not get to play in the Australian Open, but he was prevented from playing in the US Open for the same absurd reason. Australia and US policy on the unvaccinated prevented the world #1 player from setting an all-time record of Grand Slam wins. That is a travesty to a tennis great. And as we have now seen, the science shows that the vaccine was not effective in reducing transmission. So any national policy that mandated the vaccine was unscientific. And as we now also see, it was damaging to a global athlete's success. The Brooklyn Nets only turned to Kyrie Irving when their roster got depleted due to injury. And he made a point to come to a game unmasked and sit in the crowd, highlighting the fact that spectators could come watch his team, but yet he himself could not play in the game. Number two, Neil Young is a fool, and Spotify needs Joe Rogan more than Rogan needs Spotify. Piggybacking on the mistaken COVID policy of sports leagues and other organizations and governments, mega podcaster Joe Rogan was criticized for interviewing scientists such as Dr. Robert Malone, who questioned the vaccine narrative and policies, especially towards children. And merely for interviewing Malone and others, Spotify, who hosts Rogan's podcast exclusively, came under harsh scrutiny, especially from old fart Neil Young, who hasn't been relevant in ages, but has decided to make himself a martyr. As a result, he and a few other lefties decided to pull their music from Spotify in an act of virtuous defiance. Spotify had a limp-wristed reaction, pulling some of Rogan's more controversial episodes while leaving up others. Spotify said it believes in free speech, but it's obvious it did not with this knee-jerk reaction, as if a mere interview is akin to killing grandma. But Spotify understands economics, and to cancel Joe Rogan would be a huge mistake because Rogan can take his business elsewhere, just like Howard Stern did. Spotify needs Rogan more than Rogan needs Spotify. Number three, we gave a ton of money to Ukraine. And what do we have to show for it? Look, I think it's a noble thing that Zelensky wants to defend his country, and he's made a valiant defense. But we are the backers. We are an inflation nation because of bloated government spending coming out of a pandemic. So why do we keep funding this war? Even if we lose no troops, we are losing resources. and I fail to see what our return on investment is going to be. I feel for their people, for certain, but how much more will this go on? Number 4, Disney went woke. With Bob Chapek at the helm, the Mouse House went down the tubes, trying to capitulate to a loud few. They changed the way that their theme parks addressed genders and produced a slate of content that was just bizarre and unprofitable. They attacked the parental rights and education bill in Florida, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. They bit the hand that fed them and waged war against their biggest financiers, which are parents. And as a result, they lost special tax benefits and self-governance. Bob Iger has been brought back in to clean up the mess. And this is a great segue to number 5. DeSantis triumphed. As governor of Florida, DeSantis took a proactive role protecting kids and parents' rights. He saw Disney slip into trendy corporate political activism and fought back. All too often, corporations have way too much leeway, and the notion of diversity and inclusion went into overdrive. DeSantis brought autonomy and freedom to Floridians, and as a result of that, he enjoyed a 20-point victory over his gubernatorial opponent, making him the most popular governor in America, using a diplomatic yet matter-of-fact logical tone to stand up to the woke virus. Number 6, the first black female Supreme Court justice was nominated and confirmed. Ketanji Brown Jackson made history with this confirmation. But the process illuminated a very important question that she could not or would not answer. Her credentials were clearly evidentiary of a solid judge. No one doubted her academics or her experience. But some of her sentencing seemed a bit soft on child pornography defendants. And what was the question that she could not answer? Well, it became the question of the year. Number 7, what is a woman? Who would have thought that we would have to ask that? But Justice Jackson answered Senator Marsha Blackburn's question using societal redefinition. Transgender activism demanded that society call a man transition to female a woman. No questions asked. This also manifested itself in women's sports, in which biological males began to beat their female counterparts as they were allowed to compete with one another. J.K. Rowling, author of the famous Harry Potter books, drew fire for standing up for the definition of a woman, since she's a proud feminist. But even her own Harry Potter actors that she cast decided to trendily attack her. Number 8, the Oscars were a joke, but Will Smith's slap was not. In a jaw-dropping moment, Chris Rock's jaw was jabbed. It was a stunning moment in Oscars history, and probably one that they'd like back. Because we won't remember who won Best Picture this year, but we will remember Will Smith attacking the host on stage and seeming unfazed and unremorseful about it. It set a bad precedent for how we view violence. While social media was trying to prove that Trump incited violence, Will Smith was giving a masterclass in it. Number 9, Hunter Biden's laptop was real. Thanks to the Twitter files, we know that the New York Post story was accurate, but federal agencies were pressuring social media companies to quash it, and they acquiesced. As Elon Musk has said, every conspiracy theory thought about Twitter is pretty much true. Hunter Biden is not just some black sheep. He is someone who's used his position and his father's to do covert, anti-American business deals and jeopardize national security, giving other nations undue leverage. It may even be why he's giving billions to Ukraine. We are only hitting the tip of that iceberg. But it was real, and it changed how people voted. Full stop. Number 10, crime rose. The BLM protests and riots of 2020 spilled over into a nationwide crime spree, where cops were the bad guys and the looters were the heroes. Hollywood created bailout funds for those who were arrested. Justin Timberlake supported the Minnesota Freedom Fund. So while he was singing about bringing sexy back, he was bringing crime back. Violent homicides were way up, especially in America's most dangerous places, like New York City. If you stole under about $900 worth of merch, You could just walk out with it. Number 11, Johnny Depp dragged himself through the mud to salvage his reputation. This was the most exciting trial of the year. And while it seemed like a bunch of tawdry mudslinging, Depp was out to save his reputation and admitted that he was a drinker and he was a drug user, but he was not a wife abuser. He did this because the gossip alone cost him movie roles, including the Pirates franchise. As I said earlier, Disney had gone full tilt woke, and they made a huge mistake. This wasn't just a victory for Depp. This was a victory for the falsely accused and a reckoning for the media gossip complex. Number 12, the southern border got worse. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris still have not visited the southern border. They think that giving your money to Ukraine is more important. But while that was happening, people and fentanyl were getting trafficked to America. There were record apprehensions of migrants and of drug seizures because Biden relaxed border policy. Southern border cities can't handle it. So governors like Greg Abbott began shipping them to the northern states to prove the point. The border is still a mess, and the Supreme Court has recently ruled that Title 42 must remain in place, in spite of Joe Biden wanting to get rid of it. Number 13, the Roe v. Wade leak was real. We still don't know how it was leaked, but it proved to be authentic, and that set off a spark that awakened a flailing Democrat Party heading into the midterms. And in spite of the constitutional reasoning that Justice Alito provided about sending the abortion decision to the states, liberals used that decision to frame it as a grotesque removal of women's rights. And it worked. It was a Hail Mary, and it came at a pivotal time. Number 14, the Uvalde shooting proves evil still exists, but it also proves that police don't always act how and when they should. We will never be able to eradicate evil. It will happen today, whether you have laws or not. But how we mitigate it and how law enforcement and schools can react in advance or in real time are things that we will have to change. We can debate guns all you want to, but the evil inside the heart doesn't follow legal rules. We have to find a way to act more quickly in such a way that even the most depraved of criminals can be contained. Number 15, Gland goes down, but who were the clients? The defamed partner in crime of Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, was sentenced to 20 years in prison. It's amazing that she's still alive, because Epstein didn't last long. But remember, as Senator John Kennedy said, 3 things that don't hang themselves are Christmas ornaments, drywall, and Jeffrey Epstein. But who were their clients? I'm hinting, it might rhyme with. Some very powerful people are on that client list, and we might never know, but we should. Number 16, Fauci duped us. There is no way to sugarcoat this. Our most esteemed medical professional was proven wrong so many times, and he seems to be getting away with it. His advice was flawed. His science was unsound. He stymied reports of the lab leak theory. He flip-flopped on masks. He told you to get boosted and boosted and boosted again. He said alternative treatments were not just unuseful, but deleterious to your health. Fauci was a fraud. Number 17, the Queen died, but Meghan lives. Queen Elizabeth lived a noble life, literally and figuratively. She gave wartime speeches when she was just 14. Her reign was sullied a bit by the Charles and Diana fiasco and Prince Andrew's deviance. But she maintained grace when her grandson Harry married an American, Meghan Markle. But they wanted no nobility. From actress to complainer, she decided to take her new life and husband to a far more private place, Los Angeles. There are 2 sides to every story, so don't let the Netflix special cloud your mind. Number 18, the midterms were mixed. What was thought to be a red wave ended up being more of a trickle after your pipes unfreeze. The House flipped, but the Senate remained in control of the Democrats after stroke victim John Fetterman prevailed in Pennsylvania, and other purple states went blue. Donald Trump's presence helped some and perhaps hurt others. But the real loser was Mitch McConnell, who put more money and energy into Lisa Murkowski in Alaska than his candidates who had an actual chance to win. Number 19, our bureaus are biased. When Donald Trump fired James Comey, and we started to see the collusion of FBI Special Agent Peter Strzok and Christopher Steele, who was paid by the Democratic National Committee, bias became revealed. Everywhere from the FBI to the DOJ to the DHS, we saw corruption in the alphabet soup agencies. Alejandro Mayorkas proved inept, if not intentionally unfit. Merrick Garland looked lost as a ball in tall weeds after going after parents. And staffer Sam Brenton created the new Department of Stealing Luggage. The Twitter files are proving that many of these agencies were doing political bidding, not the jobs that they were sworn to do. Number 20, Kanye may be out there, but Balenciaga is worse. Yes, Ye went on a bizarre tirade and uttered some anti-Semitic things, but it doesn't mean that elements of what he said were totally false. He put his career and his fortune out there, and Adidas and Balenciaga dropped him. But that's ironic, because Balenciaga got caught red-handed in a campaign that paired children in their attire with bondage bears, and Supreme Court cases about the definition of child pornography. What's worse, many of the celebrity faces of Balenciaga, from Bella Hadid to Kim Kardashian, stayed totally silent for over a week. Many of them have been quick to criticize Elon Musk and his new captaincy of Twitter, quitting by the droves, but they remained mysteriously silent about their partnerships with Balenciaga. People thought that elitist fetishism of kids was just a conspiracy. Apparently not so. And that ties in with the highly lax child protection at Twitter before Musk took over. Between Twitter, Balenciaga, and Maxwell, this was a year where kids were highly vulnerable. But society wanted to make sure nobody's feelings were hurt. Grooming ain't just your personal hygiene habits, folks. Number 21, the January 6th committee was a show trial. It took them a year and a lot of posturing, which cost Liz Cheney her re-election. Adam Kinzinger is retiring. They could not prove anything criminal, and even Twitter's reinstatement of Trump's account shows exactly what he said in the aftermath of J6 that got suppressed. This was nothing more than a committee attempting to politically and criminally bludgeon a candidate from potentially running for office again. The FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago was after the same endgame: make him look bad. That's all it was about. And Chairman Benny Thompson is no longer going to subpoena President Trump either. Sorry, Mr. President, we have simply run out of time. And finally, number 22, Elon Musk is the person of the year. Unquestionably, Musk has been more of a powerful force than any other individual. Now, I know that Time made Zelensky their person of the year, but in terms of impact, no one has done more or been more of an informer and catalyst than Musk. Liberals had a meltdown when it was learned that he would purchase Twitter, and he made some immediate changes. But more importantly, he really became a champion of free speech. And he did so by telling the world what was going on behind closed doors at Twitter. And as it turns out, it was much worse than we thought. Throttling, suppression, partisan bias, child porn run rampant. It was all happening. You never get insight into a company unless it's on trial or it goes under. Musk was pulling the curtain back from the Wizard of Oz. He's been a Paul Revere, and like Donald Trump or like Johnny Depp, he was willing to risk a lot personally to do this. You have to hand it to him. And it hasn't been perfect. His poll shows that people want him to step down as CEO, which is striking. But the cats are all out of the bag. We are seeing that elitism is a real problem. Not just a party or a politician or George Soros group, but there's a certain elitism that is nefarious and lives in closed circles. It's media, it's big tech, it's fundraisers, it's global companies and organizations like the WHO. It's a way to keep information flowing at their rate. It's what you don't know because you're consumed with your phone and TikTok. Those who shed the most light are often the most attacked. And Musk is one of those people. He went from a car and space innovator to truth teller. And because he left the Democrat Party and showed what they were doing, he became the villain. He is the elite, showing us what the elite were doing. You gotta love that. So these were the 22 stories I felt shaped our world. I fully anticipate that we will see a fast start to 2023 with a flip in the House. So here's to you, 2022. Happy New Year. I'm Bo, and that's the Year End Show.